Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Zoo School Live. Today, we are going to be sharing a little update on one of my favorites, and I think one of Elisa's favorites animals here. Some of you may remember several months ago, we got a baby barn owl named Banshee, and today he is not so much of a baby anymore, so we're going to show you guys kind of how he's grown, talk about his training, and also why barn owls are so important. And this whole week, we're actually celebrating an early celebration, I should say, of World Migratory Bird Day, which will take place this Saturday on May 8th. And what this is actually an international celebration. It was originally coordinated by the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center back in the early 1990s. And then it was kind of taken over by U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and now is run by the Environment for the Americas organization. And so what it does is it kind of brings people together at this time of year, which is a very important part of a bird's year for many of them. They're actually migrating back from their winter grounds to their summer breeding grounds. And so when we can see a lot of these different birds moving through the area, this is a perfect time to bring awareness to some of the challenges they may face and how we can help them. So this year's theme is actually Sing, Fly, Soar. And so the overall idea is just to bring awareness to different species and help you fall in love with them so that hopefully you can better appreciate what they offer us in return. Birds are not just beautiful and fun to listen to. They are a very important part of our whole ecosystem. And hopefully in learning more about them, you will want to make some small changes in your life. So today at the very end, we'll talk about a few simple ways you can help birds in general, as with the theme. But right now, I'm going to go get our friend Mr. Banshee. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa. She's going to introduce some other owl species that Banshee would be kind of closely related to in this area, and I'll bring him out. Now, a fair warning, he is very, very, very loud. So we're going to do our best to talk over him, but he loves to chat himself. So here we go.
All right, guys, so I'm going to go over 3 of the largest species that can be found in Pennsylvania regarding to our owls. Now, there are other owl species, but we're going to start with our biggest one. And all of these cardboard cutouts are 2 sides. So this is a great horned owl. So we have 2 of these guys at Elmwood Park Zoo. One is Stella, who is our ambassador great horned owl, who is behind the scenes. And the other is Barbie, who lives by the barn. Next in size, we have the barred owl, named for the barred stripes, which is actually our film person's, one of her favorite, Kara's favorite owls. His name is Echo. He lives right next to Barbie by the barn. He's on exhibit. And then, of course, we have the barn owl, who you can definitely hear right now. This is a size, shape, and coloration of a barn owl, and we have Banshee the barn owl in our education collection. Without further ado, we're going to meet the wonderful and noisy Banshee the barn owl.
All right, guys, as I said, he's going to be real chatty, especially this morning because he's very excited for his breakfast. So we did meet Banshee several months ago in his home, but we've actually started bringing Banshee out for some training in different parts of the zoo. So what Elisa and I are going to do this morning is we're going to see if he wants to show off a little bit of his flying. So we'll see if he wants to go to Elisa. He's going to be a little distracted today. Here he goes. So we've been working on really short back and forth flights. Banshee can fly much farther than that. But for now, we are using a nice little leash, just to make sure he doesn't go someplace dangerous, because he's very, very curious. So we'll just do a few of these while he's excited about it. Now you can see he's got those beautiful colors all over his wings. And I'll bring him a little bit closer for you guys to see here for a second. See if I can keep his mouth occupied. You can see those speckles and the kind of golden gray color, and then his belly's a little lighter. Barn owls typically are going to have a darker back and a lighter underbelly because when they are flying, if they're flying at night time and an animal looks up, they want the moonlight to kind of be similar to what their underbelly looks like. Whereas if they have an animal, maybe a predator, flying above them, looking down, they want to be darker like the ground. You want to do one more? No, we're distracted. That's okay. So we can come a little bit closer here and see if Banshee wants to hang out while we talk about a few more of his adaptations before we talk a little more about his training. So you guys can see he's got super sharp talons, just like other owls. Now his feet are not as feathered as some other owl species. They're a little more naked, and that's just part of his particular design. But he does have those specialized toes that help him to grab prey. So you can see on the front, there's two very directly in the front, and then one kind of in the middle, and then one off to the back. He can actually move this one in the middle back and forth, depending on how he wants to sit. And then that beautiful facial disc, his heart-shaped face, that's the distinct feature of the barn owl compared to other species. They have some of the best hearing around. So even though he is going to use his eyes to hunt at nighttime, he's actually going to find a lot of his food just by listening. So, what Lisa and I are going to do just a little bit while we're talking about his training. We'll see if he wants to go back and forth to us. There he is. So Banshee actually only took about 8 weeks to go from baby owl to flying adult owl. Now obviously just like us, he has to kind of continue to build those muscles and grow. And so we didn't just start him off flying in our classroom. We started training him in his aviary behind the scenes. And then once he got comfortable there, we moved him to a space just outside of his little aviary to give him a similar area to look at, but slight change of scene. And now when he's quiet, that means he's discovered something. We started bringing him in the classroom and out into our zoo bowl theater. So even though Banshee was raised by us directly, we still need to do training and conditioning and get him used to different things. You could do it. Oh no. He's going to be a little easy. So we still have to get him used to different types of scenarios. Because just because he was raised here, people are thinking there's nothing that's scary. So we found recently that Banshee doesn't really like strollers. So we started working on carts and things like that to make sure he's comfortable seeing wheels and things moving. We started working on introducing him to groups of people, and because that's going to be part of his job. And we've of course started introducing him to programming. One of Banshee's favorite things to do is our owl encounter. So if you think he's pretty swell, and we definitely think he's pretty swell, and you would like to get closer and actually get a chance to work with him directly, we have an owl encounter on our website that you can actually sign up for, and you assist us in his training. And you'll get to fly him a little bit, and you'll get some photo ops on the glove. So Banshee has become a really amazing star in this part of our programming here. So we're hoping this summer he might get a chance to help us in a program, a show in our zoo bowl. But we've got to work a little bit more on his flying skills before we do that. So I figured Elisa and I would just share some fun little stories or tidbits, as we call them, about Banshee's training. If you guys want to come a little closer and get a nice look.
Yeah, we found out pretty quickly that he is much more playful than most of our other birds. The other bird in our ambassador collection that is more playful than the others is Hoover, our black vulture. Banshee has some balls in his enclosure that he really likes to play with. Some wiffle balls and some mesh balls. And if he is given that ball, you can kind of say goodbye to training because he is then done and says, I'm going to play by myself, which is adorable, but sometimes just a little bit frustrating because we want to train. But again, just like all of the animals that we've shown on Zoo School, we use a process called positive reinforcement, where we give our animals the choice to choose to participate in training. And Banshee chooses to participate pretty much every single day, which is pretty amazing. And Lauren and I often forget just how young he is and how much he's learned in such a small amount of time. The equipment that you can see on Banshee, his anklets, his jesses, and the leash that we have attached to him, we're all trained for him to sit nicely and calmly on the glove so that we can put his equipment on. That seems really simple, but I promise you that is a huge feat, huge, for him to sit calmly while we put his equipment on so that we make sure that he's safe while we're doing training sessions.
Yeah, and it's been a learning curve for Elisa and I as well, because Banshee, you know, he is fully flighted, so the goal is to one day be able to free fly him. Now, Elisa and I work with Hoover, our vulture, and she does some free flight indoors right now. And so we're working up to getting to a point where we could do flight safely outdoors in the zoo. But that also requires a lot of learning and skill on our end. And so we're figuring Banshee out right now. Like Elisa said, his motivation wanes and waxes and changes depending on the situation. I'm actually really impressed that he wanted to do anything today because he got some extra snacks yesterday and sometimes can be a little sleepy in the morning. But one of the funniest stories, moments for me that was also mildly terrifying was I was flying Banshee out in our back area, and a breeze came along and he kind of jumped off of the table we were working on and ended up landing on top of one of our other animals' enclosures, out of my reach. I'm not a very tall person, so I had him attached to a leash, of course, and I panicked a little bit, but I thought, you know what, we've been training for this, we can work through this. So I offered Banshee some snacks, I offered him the glove, and he kind of looked at me like, no, thank you. I like sitting up here where it's nice and tall, which is a pretty standard owl operating procedure. And so then I waited a little longer, tried again, then I called Kara, who's actually behind the camera today, and had her bring me his ball, and we tried that, and didn't get much of effect at first. We tried a second ball, and eventually he did hop off, and I was able to safely get him back down. But he's helping us to learn how to be better trainers and to work through situations that oftentimes might be a little bit more challenging. You know, we're trying to move away from just a standard hold the bird on your glove encounter. We're trying to do more interactive stuff. In fact, let's see if he wants to hang out with Elisa a little bit. He's looking a little antsy-pants. There you go. So once you start kind of giving your animals more choice and opportunity, you have to be prepared to work through those choices, whether they are good choices or not so good choices. So we always remind Banshee to please make good choices. Sometimes he's better at it than other days. We also do some exercises with him to try to help him build some muscles. So hopping up from the ground is one of those. Some days he just stares at the floor. Hi. Good job. So it's a little more challenging to go vertically than it is to go horizontally. So we'll do another one of those. Good boy. And while we're working with Banshee, just a reminder, if anybody has any questions, things they'd like to know about him, now is the time to put those in the comments if you haven't already. We're happy to answer them about him. So while we're talking about training and barn owls in general, you know, one of the reasons that Banshee is here is as an ambassador animal to help people learn and hopefully help them to form bonds and connections so that they care a little bit and they might make some changes to their behavior. And as we are celebrating World Migratory Bird Day, it's a good time to remind you of how important this particular species of owl really is. Barn owls are actually found across the world. They are found on pretty much every continent except for Antarctica. And one barn owl can eat around 25,000 mice in 1 year. 25,000 mice in a year. That's amazing. And so they are an excellent source of free pest control that we really don't have to do anything for except for provide them shelter and protect them. Unfortunately, owls and many birds of prey, while they are amazing at helping to control pests, they unfortunately are still hunted, killed because people think they're going to come after their pets, their children, their livestock. Now, there are certain species that will hunt for chickens and things like that. They'll take an easy meal, but most of the time these birds are not looking to get involved in your animals in your backyard or your children. So they're still prosecuted and they're still hunted and they're still suffering from human causes. Aside from being hunted and aside from general habitat loss, the biggest one for barn owls is actually rodenticide, which is pretty ironic when considering they eat about 25,000 mice in a year. So they are free pest control, but we are accidentally killing them off by using chemical pest controls. So it's important that you consider your actions and how they are impacting the rest of the world around you. And one of those tips we want to give you guys for this World Migratory Bird Day is to choose bird-friendly options. If you can, avoid pesticides, rodenticides that could end up in the food chain. Avoid sticky traps, especially in our area. I know we have problems with the spotted lanternfly, but so many birds end up getting stuck to those sticky traps. Put little window covers on your glass windows to prevent collisions and things like that. Make sure that you plant plants that could provide habitat and food for your local birds. And if you happen to want to attract barn owls, you can by putting up barn owl boxes. They will nest inside of boxes because they are cavity nesters. So there are a lot of different things you can do to help them. That's just one really easy one, is to choose bird-friendly items. The other big threat to these guys is actually our pets. So while we're worried about our pets being eaten by owls and hawks, the other problem is actually reversed. Our pets cause a lot of damage. They can be destructive. They can harass and scare animals, whether it's intentional or not. And so keeping your pets on a leash, and especially keeping your cat pets indoors, that can save a lot of animal lives, especially for our bird friends. So we'll take a moment here. Do we have any questions today, Kara?
Yes, so our first question is from Janet. She says, 1, he's beautiful, but how old is he?
How old is he? So Banshee's birthday is actually July 27th. So he is coming up on, I think, 7 months? I gotta do some quick math in my brain. Yeah, 8 months? 8 months. 8 months old.
Our next is from Teresa. She wants to know, what are you feeding him?
Ooh, great question. So he is getting little pieces of mice today. So he does eat a mixture of mice and rats here at the zoo usually. Now in the wild they would hunt a lot of rodents, and then they would still eat, they would also eat bugs and snakes and frogs and things like that. But today he's getting mice bits.
Just to capture what he's doing, there is an ant currently crawling on the ground that I wouldn't have noticed had he not stopped and did that head motion, which he sometimes does when he's focusing on something, which I thought was pretty cool. I wouldn't have known that that ant was there had he not been quiet and started moving his head in that area. That's how good their eyesight is, along with their hearing. So
yeah, that heart-shaped face really helps him pick up every single sound. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, I feel like that's what he was looking at.
Our next question is from Sid. She would like to know, how big is his wingspan?
Ooh, good question. So his wingspan is probably around 3 to 4 feet. It's not super obvious. Maybe when he was flying towards the camera earlier, you could kind of see that. But his wings are a lot bigger than his body, and it's really only obvious when he's flying. And I actually didn't even realize how big they were till we got some video of him, and I put it in like slow-mo. So yeah, about 3 to 4 feet is their wingspan, which is really impressive. All right, guys. Well, as always, if anyone has any other questions about our friend Banshee, the barn owl, or ways that you can help on World Migratory Bird Day this Saturday, May 8th, please feel free to drop those in the comments and we'll get back to them. We hope you guys enjoyed watching Banshee play around a little bit today, do some of his training. He certainly enjoyed coming out and sharing that time with you, and hopefully you could hear us over his very loud chatter. And we will see you guys again on Thursday with another one of our bird friends for a special Useful Live Migratory Bird Week. Have a great one, guys.